about to make like a conservative argument, but like I wonder what effect that had on like people's psyche who went and became cops, you know?
I mean, yeah, exactly. Like you grew up, and all the cops you see in media, the good cops who are the main characters,
like
dirty. Well, the main characters were all the ones who broke the rules.
No,
The good cops who followed the rules got nothing done.
That's what I'm
Usually
saying.
got murdered by the criminals
That's what I'm
because they
saying.
were like, let's have these people. All the cops. You're watching Dirty Harry. You're watching Mel Gibson in Lethal Weapon.
That's like so many of those like strongman characters. Like it's not necessarily has to be cops. Like it's like
No, and this is a good
stupid,
time to
macho
bring up
thing.
the documentary, because on this channel, whenever we do a comic or a book, I like to bring in a documentary that's kind of like a companion piece that kind of covers the same themes. So, The Force, it's a documentary. It's on Netflix from 2017, the same year excellent documentary, the same year that Batman White Knight came out, that covers a lot of the same themes, where Oakland police in the it was 2014 to 2016, was trying to reform their department. And you see a lot of...
You should say, so they got taken over by the federal government oversight, I guess, committee, or I don't know what the name of the committee is, but they were having all these problems. They were basically seen as one of the most like corrupt and brutal forces in the country. So the federal government basically stepped in and they entered a period of oversight where this documentary takes us sort of like they're getting to the end of that period. And it's just sort of, I mean, you could take it from there, but I just wanted to preface it with the idea that they were taken over by the government because they were so corrupt.
Because they basically, it was, they were given no other choice of like, you have to reform your police department. And you see things seem to be getting better. And then you realize that a lot of the people in the police department who were kind of trying to make progress, who seemed like good people, were actually a part of this major sex scandal where they were soliciting a teenage girl for sex. And it ends where you're like right back where you started.
Pretty much.
And it kind of shows of just how difficult reforming the police really is. In Batman White Knight, they make it seem a lot more simplistic than that.
Well, it's not reality.
It's not reality. It's a comic book. They kind of end on the same conclusions, though, because this comic ends with, instead of having a police department, and instead of having superheroes going around who have no accountability, aka renegade cops, you now have a community-based police department where the people who are being policed have a much bigger say in how they are being policed. They are considered kind of part of the police as well. And it ends with, Batman.
I still don't understand that concept, though. No one has explained how that would work that I've seen. And granted, maybe I haven't, done the best job of seeking it out. Although I am obviously interested in the subject, but like, I just don't understand what is community policing?
In reality, I'm not sure how it would exactly work,
because it doesn't really make any sense.
In the comic, it's more like
I'm more interested in real life. But
in the comic, it's more like basically all the lower level stuff would just be handled by like basically a neighborhood watch.
So that I understand. Like that's when they're talking about if you're responding to, which anybody should be able to understand this concept. If you're responding to, a situation that's not violent.
Yes.
And I get that it's like, well, how do you know it's not violent? Well, that's where you have to use some fucking judgment.
Yeah.
And so having like a social worker respond to a mental condition rather than someone who's gonna, end up discharging a firearm.
Yeah.
Now, what I'll say, though, is like something that would be useful for people to see, because it's very easy to sit on Twitter or sit on social media and be like, oh, defund the police, oh, why, everything has to escalate to violence. And then what this documentary shows you is you actually see a lot of the police academy training, and some of the videos where they're showing you a situation that can occur and you have to react. You have like very, very small reaction time. Right. Like it's almost like it even changed my mind a little bit to where I'm like, I don't want to be in that situation.
No,
where you're just like, you have like, is this a violent thing? Is this, is this person pulling a gun? Like sometimes you don't fucking have that long to decide. And that's like really scary.
No, and it is really scary, but it is something.
I'm not talking about a George Floyd.
Obviously.
No, obviously,
no.
It's not discounting. If you know me personally or you see any of my social media, I'm just fucking. I'm on.
Well, even the most pro police people in the world look at George Floyd and agree that was a murder.
I don't know, man. I think you're being a little
or majority of America agrees or on the same page.
I'm not saying like there's certain examples that are obviously egregious and obviously horrible, and there's some where it's borderline, and you're like, well, you know what? You have to figure out a way where that person doesn't end up dead.
Yeah, exactly. And I think kind of just reducing the amount of times that police are sent to a situation, I think does help. That sending a social
100%.
worker instead of a cop does help. Because I agree, it's a scary situation. You don't know that you have a gun.
Some of that body cam footage, dude, was like rough.
Yeah.
Where you're like, and by the way, like in that documentary, there's one example where, there's this big vigil for this guy and they're like, oh, the police killed him. And then you watch the body cam footage and you're like, what you're describing is 100% not what happened.
Yeah.
Like this dude was fucking like running, and like had a weapon and like they made it out like it was like this, oh my God, the cop just shot him in the street. And it's like, that is not accurate.
No. And I know what you mean is that like people do run to judgment a lot.
Sure.
But like I say, you have to look at the context. You have to look of the history of everything leading up to that.
I'm 100% on that side.
Is that you have to understand of, yes, when they say that the police shot him in the street, they're wrong. That's not what happened. But they have a history.
Technically, yes.
All right.
Right. Like technically, he was shot.
But
the circumstances they were describing.
What I'm saying was the circumstances of he was an innocent person who the police just shot. That's not true.
Exactly.
But there's a long-standing history before that led to that person believing that was true.
Of course. And like, I'm forgetting her name now, but one of the community, I guess, organizers or activists who are, it was the woman and the guy who were setting up that community board to kind of like air out a lot of these ideas. She just said like policing has never worked for us, meaning people of color. And yeah, of course. Like, so when you have that history, it's hard to judge a situation or a circumstance individually when it's like you take the totality of the history has trended in this one direction.
Well, I think that's a lot of when people talk defund the police or community policing, it's, well, maybe that person wouldn't have been so agitated if someone besides a police officer was there. Maybe that person wouldn't have run if there was a social worker besides a police officer there.
How many examples can I just think of? I'm not a person of color. Like I can't tell you how many instances I've had where I have an interaction with a police officer and afterwards I'm fucking so angry.
Yeah.
It's like, why the fuck did you just come at me with like over here on this level?
Yeah.
Now, granted, you probably have PTSD because you probably saw a murder scene or you probably, whatever. But again, if it's a fucking traffic thing, maybe you don't need to have, Mr. Military fucking screaming at you. is this helpful? You know what I mean?
And and now imagine you're in a situation where there's a dude dressed up as a bat who's going around at night beating the shit out of people.
All right.
Well, I'm trying to bring it back to, we're talking about Batman right now, but
well, we're talking
about the police, we're talking about everything, but